Yes, we are
conversation.
live.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
we are live. More or
Uh,
less.
so we had some teasers last time we met. We started talking about uh, what students, what districts rather should do coming the fall, how they should open up. Uh, for myself, uh, I've come out and said I don't think they should. I think they should be fully online, and I've stated a few reasons for that. But what I'd like to do today is to go through sort of each of the groups or the stakeholders involved. I'll start out with a quick scenario that I actually spoke to one of a friend of mine, an assistant soup, and this person was talking about what they were going to do for the upcoming school year. And like a lot of places, they're doing a blended model where some kids come in on some days, some kids come on the other days. The days that they're not there, they're doing online. But it's very sort of choppy. They still don't know, number one, if they're going to be able to implement that plan, but they also don't know how the online instruction is really going to look on those online days, how engaging that's going to be. The days they're in school, how they're limiting the number of students, but they're unsure of exactly how that's going to look. So it's very much, hey, we're going to try this and see, but not super organized. And I was talking to this person, and I said, wouldn't it the ideal thing be that teachers go in, they have like a Zoom or some kind of video conference piece where they're delivering the lesson in school. Certain kids will go in school, certain kids would not go in school, and it would be the same experience whether you're in school or out of school, essentially, right? And those kids that can't go in school would do it from home, or opted to stay home can do it from home. That in itself may actually limit the numbers. And he said that would be great, but the teachers aren't ready for that. We haven't trained them. We haven't had that professional development piece. They're not comfortable doing that. So there's so many, and then parents, get involved in the conversation as well as the students and what's good for them. So what let's do today, let's go through sort of each of the stakeholders, starting with probably the most essential as far as the buy-in, as far as administrators and teachers, to probably the most important, which are the students. So if we start out with the administrators, Rich, I mean, you haven't, none of us have gone through this as administrators, when we were at that district level. But if you put your administrator hat on, like, what are you looking at? Like, what are some of the things that we're looking at? What are some of the things that we're considering? And where do we have to go to sort of be in the right place for the fall? That's the first group, those administrators. Thoughts on that?
Not sure if I'm not sure about what I'm about to say, but let me stumble through it for a moment. On the one hand, as an administrator, I would like to see that take this, and I don't like the phrase, but here it comes, to how we make lemonade out of lemons. Another way to look at it would be to say, I would like to see how we can seize this opportunity to inject some real transformative thinking into what we do instructionally, especially what we do instructionally by way of the capacity of technology to do that. But that's probably, knowing me, that's probably kind of pie in the sky, because as an administrator with this epidemic, no pun intended, breathing down our neck, I've got to get instruction delivered from teachers who, as you just described, probably don't have the capacity, the training, the infrastructure, the philosophy ingrained in their souls to truly use technology for what we could have been doing with technology for a very long time. Now, as the administrator, that would be my fault. And I would probably take the hit for that, and rightfully so. But, and I've never been good at this, and you know this, Al, but practically speaking, I think I need to figure out a way, and I really don't like the phrase I'm going to use, to find the highest, lowest common denominator I can reach to assure myself that all the students are getting, I don't like the word I'm going to use now either, adequate instruction.
Yeah.
I think I'll stop there for a moment. You can piggyback from there.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're in this blended space as administrators, which they're trying to accommodate all these different aspects and capacity of in, and it's not just in the online space. Like we've sort of had a lot of teachers that are wonderful and engaging, but a lot of teachers that have sort of fallen behind too, and that's because we don't emphasize professional development. We don't emphasize the innovation and creativity. We don't sort of support that innovation and creativity of teachers by giving them enough time to not just learn things, but actually implement them in the classroom in an engaging way with project-based learning, that kind of thing. So I think you're right. It is our fault, to your point. It is the fault of administrators that we're here now. And it's the fault of the system overall that we're here now. My thought, as far as a solution as an administrator, and some districts are doing this, is to actually delay the start of the school year. And I think some people are taking that as an opportunity to prepare, really truly prepare their teachers and give them the time they need, not just to learn, but to actually implement, develop the lessons they need to throughout the year. I think that's a very good solution because it's like if you start on time and it's still this sort of convoluted thing that's happening, and every stakeholder is really uneasy about what's going on and afraid for the safety of themselves, if they're teachers or students or the parents even contracting COVID. If we're in this sort of frenzied state anyway, why not take a step back and really make sure that what we're putting in place is the right thing? If I use Major League Baseball as an instance of this, Major League Baseball had a great plan to start up again. They started up again, and all of a sudden, the Florida Marlins team, everybody has COVID. As a Yankee fan, sorry, any other fans out there, but as a Yankee fan, the game got canceled. It has this exponential effect. This season could, for all we know, get canceled again, right? Because of this exponential effect. So I think that's what we're kind of doing for schools. We're going into this half-hearted plan to try and make everybody happy, but we're not truly preparing for what we need to prepare for. And that is, we could start on day one, a kid gets COVID, and we have to completely shut it down. And then what are we back to? So this sort of adequate, like you said, experience in the online space, that doesn't do anyone any good. So in my mind, administrators, delay the start, properly prepare your teachers so that they truly could switch from one medium to another. That's what I think would be best to do, to have this sort of transformable learning environment with an engaging, equally engaging experience in the classroom and online. And you could flip-flop back and forth in that experience seamlessly. And I think that's what we need to work for, but we're not. We're doing this sort of quick fix. Let's see if we can make everybody happy. And the reality is it could crumble right away. Thoughts, Rich?
Without a doubt, without a doubt. In fact, as you were saying that, I was thinking from two frames I don't like to think from when it comes to schooling, the act of schooling and bringing kids, enabling kids to be all of what they have the right to be. And the two things that came to mind were politics and economy. And there's no question that I really believe that whatever districts opt to delay, and I have read about it in a couple of instances where they're going to try that model. I didn't understand it as well as you just explained it, to be honest with you. And I applaud the thinking behind it. If everyone's thinking the way you're thinking about it, that makes a lot of sense in certain senses. However, the yes buts are, will it fly politically? We're very aware there's a lot of pressure from people without the authority, but supposedly the bully pulpit to argue strongly for opening school face-to-face, forget online, just to get the schools open. And they're not arguing for that because they're so worried about whether students are going to learn, whatever it is we decide learning means, so much as to quite frankly, for schools to be part of the other function that it is, and this is the harsh term, daycare centers.
Yeah.
You know, if the schools aren't open, has kept parents in the home as well, hopefully shielding themselves from the horrors of this pandemic, but clearly has, without a doubt, I mean, economically really affected us badly. So if we send kids back to school, kids go back to school, and the teachers do whatever it is that they're going to do. I'm thinking face to face more than online right now, Al. And people can, in theory, go back to work. So that's the economics of it, and that's the politics of it. And I would imagine that most districts would have to somehow answer to that point. Now, the other piece of it too is all right. So, for argument's sake, uh, I read someplace, and I know some colleges don't plan to open up till the spring. But let's drop it down to K-12 world for a minute. And then we said, okay, we're not going to open until January, right after the holiday break. We're going to open it in January, someplace in there, and that'll give us 4 months to wait for the hopefully for the virus to go its way, or have a vaccine, or something to more therapeutically handle it. That's just wonderful. And so what we'll do with the teachers for the next September, October, November, December is we'll use that to, my word, transform their teaching.
Yeah.
The approach it. I read an article the other day about how evil it is to ask any kid to watch a Zoom lecture for 30 minutes. It is evil. It's evil when you're sitting there, let alone watching it online. So if we could somehow,
Rich. Yeah, Rich.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point. I mean, we can't just sort of delay. It's summertime now too. It was like everything happened in summertime, and people need a break, right? So you can't expect teachers, especially teachers and administrators, although they're more 12-month usually. You can't expect teachers to have this major sprint to the finish line without any reprieve whatsoever, because they're just going to get burned out. So with that, if you do delay, say a month or 2 months or whatever it is, it has to be really well designed, formulated to make sure that the instruction truly is transformed, and teachers are really given the skills necessary to get this done in the right way. We actually have a couple comments too. We have Marissa says we don't know the known, and we still don't know the known and the unknown exactly. And Brett is on with us too. He says we nicely explained about the delay. He actually is commenting about parents. I'm going to hold that one for a second, Brett. So let's shift. You mentioned the four groups. So we talked a little bit about administrators. Parents, you mentioned earlier too, Rich. This is a really interesting one too, because parents are worried on multiple levels. They're worried about the safety of their kids, the kids getting COVID, the kids bringing it home. They're worried about the technology piece. If it is online, how do we work with that? How do we deal with that? And then here locally, like it's happening with these blended models, you're seeing things called these learning pods pop up like crazy, because I see Facebook posts, I see things on private messages. What are you doing with your kids? How are you accommodating your kids on the days that they're not in school? And it goes back to that daycare piece too, Rich, that you're talking about, but also the social piece and the learning, especially the younger grades. They can't do this on their own. So there has to be some kind of synchronous help set up. And I'm not saying that we have all the solutions, but if there's not synchronous help on those days the kids aren't in school, they're going to get lost fast. They're not going to get a lot done, especially the younger grades, even honestly middle school and high school. There needs to be training for them. They need to be taught. And again, this is our fault as educators. We haven't done this. They need to be trained to learn how to learn essentially in this space. They need to learn how to have the discipline, have a calendar schedule, simple things, right? That be disciplined every day to get tasks done and not let it pile up. These are things that they will encounter right after K-12. In higher ed, they usually encounter it, although in higher ed, sometimes it takes time too. So as a parent, like if I'm putting my parent hat on, there are so many things that we have to consider. And it's not, parents are kind of left in a lurch to do things independently, say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the announcement. This is what we're doing as a district. And now here, figure it out. And that's not really fair to parents, and that's not healthy for parents in any way, shape, or form, because all they care about is getting their kids taken care of, the education they need. They don't want them to fall behind. Uh, on those days in the online space, they don't want them to fall even further behind for some if they're not tech savvy or they don't understand things. As far as the parents go, Rich, what are the things to consider? And then what are some solutions that we may offer for parents in this scenario as well?
Yeah, the word I kept thinking about as you were describing it was a sense of consistency. Uh, Not necessarily in terms of how students taught how to divide by fractions necessarily, but you'd like to think that somehow the parents are going to help the school system, whichever system it was that they put in place to instruct the students, has a level of consistency so there isn't any um, inconsistency, for want of a better word, in what the students are learning and how they're learning it. Because in the end, that's going to be a Pandora's box that we'll have to solve when we ever do come back to out of this lunacy that we're part of. That's certainly a part of what this is about. And again, to me, responsibility goes back to futures-based leadership folks who had anticipated. I was thinking this before you got online today. This is back before you were born, Al. But I remember my uncle Billy in North Babylon, New York, built a house, and in the middle of this basement, he built a fallout shelter. Because in those days, there were atomic attacks, and he had a
Right.
fallout shelter, a sink, a bathroom, and had food. And I know that one of my cousins is still living in the fallout shelter, actually, as still lives with his mother. But it was really a sense of that was actually a futures-based idea, thinking that there was a probability that this would happen. Since in this case, we as school leaders and any policymakers didn't put the onus on the leadership to prepare for a disaster like this or other ones that hopefully will never happen, but could happen, to work that through so that the parents aren't left at the end of the stick trying to cooperate to the best of their ability and yet may not have the means, the resources, and here comes that word again, the capacity to do this. So I would think that somehow we'd have to figure out a way to maybe divide the district up and have captains or from the central office being responsible for either a level of learning or a geographic area of learning so that they could be a source for these folks to help them minimally adequately meet what the needs might be.
Yeah, Rich, Brett actually has to jump, but thank you, Brett, for joining. He mentioned bringing parents in, sort of educating parents about the student expectations where they're explained. I was speaking to a friend of mine last week, and I actually think they should really formalize a few things for parents as a solution. I think they should have sessions dedicated to both informing parents
Yeah.
about what's going on in school with their child, like a teacher would have like sort of an open house at the beginning of the year, but do that more consistently in the online space. I think it would help, honestly, overall. But I think it would be really helpful also to offer sessions for parents to learn how to use the technology at home, to learn how, sort of this new model of instruction, the potential and possibilities there too. I think it's even like I mentioned with these learning pods, I think it's kind of left to chance. It's left to the organic nature of, hey, it'll be figured out by this.
Good word.
Well, that's great, but it does need focus. Like these parents should not be scrambling to find learning pods or figure out that we have to create learning pods, and they're looking for educators to help lead these learning pods, especially for the younger grades. Like that shouldn't really be left to chance. And back to my administrator hat, I want to have those resources available for parents too, whether to educate, to say, hey, listen, here's a pool of teachers that maybe you could access. Here's a way that certain people are doing it. Here's some guidance in that area. Because otherwise parents are just grasping at straws. They're not educators. A lot of them are not educators, right? So it's this thing where we do need to have, even though it's going to happen organically no matter what we do with parents, we still need to have some direction for them. We still need to help them sort of manage the situation for their kids, because in the end, we are still responsible to educate those kids. It's not, hey, we're online, so it's on you. As educators, we're still responsible to to guide and help those kids, even those off days or in a fully online environment.
Well, you really just sparked me on something. We should do a whole podcast on this. Uh, there's three kinds of futures. There's what's possible, what's probable, and what's preferable. We talk about that, you and I, every time we speak to each other. There's also a fourth P, and that's the projected future, the George Jetson kinds of things that are further out. Isn't it interesting? I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you, and I'm not advocating for it necessarily, but this education part, isn't this an interesting development? It just is. I mean, I don't have any idea where those threads are going to take us, but I mean, it conceivably could be a competition for public schooling in the same sense that we have increasing competition for public schooling to begin with, not necessarily effective alternatives to public schooling. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but clearly, these education pods, the word you use, has kind of a capitalistic entrepreneurship thing that we don't see. Back in the Middle Ages, nobody went to PS 138 in 12th century England. You either swept the floor for your mother and father, or you went and you slaughtered the cow. You worked. You did things around the house, and if you were lucky, you got apprenticeships to become XYZ under some kind of mentor. Almost strikes me that this a kind of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, yeah,
Different kind of thread to pursue here. I'm
yeah.
smiling. I want to go there.
There is. It's evolving. It's evolving pretty fast. That market. If you can create some of these learning pods and develop some of this stuff, that market's really evolving fast. It's also the danger, and you have this. So the charter school versus the public school. That's always been in this place in place as well. And we could have again a whole podcast on that.
Oh,
But
yes.
there is a worry I would be worried as a public educator. There's a worry for this sort of decentralizing of education, right? Where, hey, we can do it on our own, and we've been doing it on our own. I'm not gonna stay in this madness of public education as some may perceive, right? We can do it on our own. We know we can do it on our own now, and we're going to do that. So I think there is that risk as well. If we don't show guidance as public educators, there is that risk too, where people can just say, "Listen, we're good. We don't need you guys," right? I mean, I don't think it's likely because I think people default to traditional education and will usually stay with that. But where, like you said, like we really don't know what the future holds. I mean, technology wise, everything. There's so many things that you can. Could you imagine and just try to wrap your head around? Someone comes out with a completely virtual classroom for one of these learning pods with Oculus Rift headsets.
Right.
And, that becomes the classroom experience, so that it's this really truly engaging experience for students, and you all meet in a virtual room. And I mean, this is possible. The technology is possible now to do that. So I think we really have to be careful about providing that guidance to parents, right? So Rich, I want to get to two quick, and maybe we do a little bit more on this. Teachers as well. I think we talked a little bit about teachers in the fact that they really need to be prepared for this. We can't expect teachers to say, "Hey, you got to go figure this out. You got to go do it on your own, figure it out, and then hit the road." Right? We need to be able to provide quality professional development, and not just that phase one professional development that always happens, where they say, "Hey, here's what you need to know," and then now get back to teaching, right? Which is what happened in the pandemic, because no one knew what to do, and then it was just kind of build a plane in midair after that. We need to show them what they need to do from best practices, from technology, from engagement online or in the classroom, and then actually let them develop, create, play, share. Those are the things that need to happen. That's why that delay, I think, would be best. If those things could happen, then you really would get a good understanding of teachers. The fear would be somewhat removed. But with that, teachers too, maybe a teacher has an autoimmune disease. Maybe a teacher is going through an illness or has a child that at home that could be affected by COVID. Is there a world where teachers can either be remote or teach in the classroom. The technology's there. There's no reason we can't do it. Have the teacher projected giving lessons in the classroom, and have the added expense of an aide in the classroom to monitor for things. There's ways to do this that need to be considered and need to be done in some instances for teachers too.
I remember the last podcast we did about I guess it was 2 weeks ago. Tom Whitby made that point, if I remember correctly. It's something along the lines of maybe we need teachers who are face types, and maybe we need teachers who can work strictly from the house and perhaps team up. So if you were the online person and I was a face-to-face teacher, you and I might be somehow restructured to be the teachers for X amount of students. And that's a very intriguing concept if you think about it. I mean, again, the opportunities to transform conceivably are there if we can shed the mindsets that hold us back. I like the way I said that, because that's a bumper sticker to some extent. Because I had a teacher one time, we were changing over the literature. We had a basal reading system, and I said, well, no, we can't do this anymore. So we went to literacy collaborative, basically the current kind of reading system that's in most school districts today. And the teacher come up to me, very nice lady, very dedicated, and a hardworking person, said, well, aren't you worried about this change? I said, well, yeah, but that's going to be complicated. I understand that. She says, well, aren't you worried about how we do on the scores? And I said, and I to tell you the truth, I didn't even think about it. I just sort of said it. I said, good teaching brings good scores.
Right.
And her face kind of like, her jaw dropped. I don't think she had a thought of it herself. When I'm driving at, if we let the days in Albany or in Denver, wherever the schools of ed, boards of ed in the states may be, if we perceive that they're going to obstruct us or hamper us from the innovation, then let it be on their heads when none of this works. Where in fact we've got to, as you said, really, and again, as leaders, open up a risk-free, innovative mindset to steal from George Kouros's title of his best-selling book, an innovator's mindset, where we can create an atmosphere to nurture teachers to change the way they look at life insofar as how children can and should learn. And you don't necessarily do that from September 1st to December 1st because we have this potential window of opportunity. This is something where the acorns should have been in the ground a long time ago, but it's never too late to put the acorn in the ground for that matter as well. So I think we should take advantage of those kinds of things.
We have a LinkedIn user, we don't know the name here, but how feasible is it for schools to offer an online-only program for families that opt in while still supporting in-class instruction for those that feel in-person is worth the risk? And that's what we're talking about, Rich. Maybe you have 50% of your teachers dedicated to the online, and you have half your students or percentage of students in that online space. And that could go up or down one way or the other, right? There's no reason that even beyond COVID, that can't or couldn't be or shouldn't be an option for schools. Like, why can't that be the case, that there is a fully online option? Our local district is actually doing sort of outsourcing the online option. And the issue I have with that piece is it's a different experience than actually being in the same school versus a school actually developing with the same curriculum, the same vision, the same goals. A high school, for example, if you go in the online space or face-to-face or even hybrid, and they're interchangeable, it's the same experience for a student, right? That's what you want it to be. You don't want to be this disjointed experience for students. And that's the last group. I just want to quickly get to them. We'll wrap up, Rich. The students as well. I have kids. You have kids, grandkids. The students in my own house, they're like, let's just do everything online. It's much easier. We'll get it down. Some students want to go face to face. You have extracurricular activities that are involved. But students too, I think more than anything, they just want to be able to follow what's going on. They want to be part of the school culture. They want to be able to eventually graduate and then go to college. They don't want to fall behind. But students too, they need help with the technology. Even though they grow up with it, they still need help with the organizational skills, the discipline it takes in an online environment. They need help in certain areas, and we can't just expect them. And the ethical piece too, doing the right thing online, doing the wrong thing. We can't just expect them to know this stuff. We have to help them through this stuff. And if you had a plan, it needs to cover the administrators, what they're going through, and that whole empathy word again, the teachers, what they're going through, right, and considering their needs, the parents, what they're going through, and then most importantly, the students, and that's in my mind where it should all stem from. And if you take this, if you do it delaying, you take this time, it should go from the students down, right? The students first, and everything. The students should be in that center of that circle, right? That's what we can't lose sight of. The students, that what their experience is are they engaged? Are they ready? Do they have the technology needs? Do they understand how to use their technology? Do they understand what it takes, discipline-wise, scheduling-wise, to get things done? Do they understand the independent nature of some of this online or hybrid stuff and how to navigate that? We have to prepare them for that, right, Rich?
Without a doubt, and again, I'm being Joe negative, I guess, a little bit today. If we were to come in with some wild-eyed, really raving, wonderful, engaging, innovative activities on the tech side, and yet the students, I'm thinking the secondary students to some extent, and if those students have been subject to the same, we won the War of 1812, now write that down, next, turn the page and read this book, tell me what this says, approach, which is the way, I'm not saying it characterizes the bulk of the education in our world, but certainly still plays a major part for lots of teachers and lots of kids. One cannot expect the students to suddenly shift into a different gear. Right. And so there's a whole sense of sensitivity to that has to be put into the pot and distilled along with the changes of the teachers. That's a good point that you made about that. We should probably, I'm totally serious about this, we should probably, I'm daring you to dare me back on this, or maybe contributions from the folks who we both thank for offering questions to the chat today. Maybe we should kind of create our own model and present it the next time.
I'd love to do it, and I'd love to make that sort of. We have 2 books coming out. Well, I have 2 books. You have one, but you contributed to both, actually, Rich. We have one called The Collective Mindset and one called The Education Fix. They're coming out soon, so we're really pumped about that. But
and we got the book,
your book that's already published, Future-Based Change Leadership. So anybody who wants to get any of those, let us know. But we also would love, like you're talking about creating this model. You know, if anybody that's watching this wants to be part of our show, come on in, and we love this sort of collective mentality that we've developed to come together, find solutions together. And we are big, like you said, Rich, on developing models around this. And if we look at each of these groups and develop sort of a model with this that anybody's interested with to do with us, we'd love to do it. We'll do it ourselves, but we'd love to have additional input that we can bring people in. We can bring a lot of people into this really wonderful Restream.io. We could bring up to 10 people in, so we could have a think tank. And those think tanks are really powerful in this time. Think tanks for parents, think tanks for students, think tanks for teachers, administrators, all of them together. Like, think tanks really work well as long as there's really something, an actionable outcome, an actionable model that comes out the other side, right?
Let's do this. Come on, it's really, to tell the truth, he and I can do it, but let's get some folks to step up, and then we'll organize it and we'll take it to the next place.
Yeah, excellent. Rich, thanks again. Always great doing these shows with you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to those of you. We have Marissa, Brett, a few others in there that I can't see their names. Thanks for chatting and participating. It's wonderful that you were able to do that. And we will see everybody next week to continue this conversation. Hopefully have some sort of think tank going with a group of folks.
We're going to call this Ed Fix Junior High School.
Yes. Rich always has his entrepreneur hat on. Yeah. So, all right.